Welcome, Russian agents, lesbian vampires, and knockoff Ellen Turing, to episode 405 of an Unearthly Podcast, streaming live on the 2nd of June, 2021, and featuring The Curse of Fenric, written by Ian Briggs, and starring Sylvester McCoy as the Doctor and Sophie Aldred as Ace. I am Bill Sylvia, the writer in black, and with me are Randy Ronson McCulloch.
Good evening.
Mad Matt Winchell.
Nanu.
And Thomas Fireheart.
Still funny seeing someone with the surname Briggs and then not being Nicholas Briggs.
All right. So, how's everybody's week been?
I suddenly got invited to apply for a job today.
Oh.
Yeah.
What job?
Around 9 o'clock, I got called by Family Dollar here in town.
Nice.
They're like, okay, we're just checking your history here. Look like the last time you worked was around 2009. And it was basically another job kind of like this. Yep. So you just need a little bit of training. Yeah, pretty much. So actually, yeah, come in for an interview around 1 o'clock tomorrow, please.
Hope that pans out for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Crossing fingers.
Then you're not living solely on subscription money.
The limited amount that I get. It'll be nice to actually be able to afford a contraption to help cool down my room, especially if it's going to keep hitting 90s like it's about to this next weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank God. I'm just thankful for air conditioning. But
speaking of which, I bought a like one of those portable tabletop air conditioners that I can keep on my bedstand. And then of course immediately after I got it, the temperature dropped from like 87 to like 65. So I haven't tested it out yet, but hopefully that means no more sleepless nights.
One hopes. I was actually looking at some of those too. I'm just like, maybe for a little more extra money.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard mediocre things about those.
I would assume it depends upon the brand, but yeah, it's possible.
I spent a lot of time making sure not to buy one with bad reviews. I did realize, I forget if it was before or after I checked out, but this one says that it's not great when it's high humidity, because it relies on water to like cool down the air.
Mm-hmm.
So all the reviews were positive, so I'm hoping that it's not as bad. Also, I'm not living as close to water as I used to. Ohio borders a Great Lake, but I'm literally on the other side of the state, so hopefully that's not as bad of an issue.
I'm 3 blocks away from a river, so...
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
I'm also close to a river, yeah.
Yeah, and humidity around here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's the Great Lakes or what, but humidity sucks in Wisconsin in the summer. It's not Florida bad, but it ain't good.
And yeah, there have definitely been days in the 9 months I've lived here. There have been days where it might not have been 100% humidity, but definitely above 80. So, hopefully this at least allays the worst of it.
So my week we streamed.
And we streamed.
And we streamed some more. I'm pretty sure by the end of it, my laptop was glowing of its own accord.
I think a lot of our computers were. Jesus. What, other than what we were streaming?
Yeah, Conan Exiles had a thing where if you watch Twitch streams for 2 hours, for certain times you got drops up to 2 hours every day. So we wound up streaming every day and watching each other's stream in order to get drops.
One thing I've been thinking about with regarding streaming, I imagine it's pretty upload intensive if someone were to try to share their screen like over like Skype or something and also be streaming at the same time, huh?
Yeah, it can, yeah.
I've been trying to figure out a good way to, like, if I started a Final Fantasy stream, where like I could have like 4 people like watching the same, be on the call and like control their own character without it completely destroying my upload speed.
Oh, that'll kill your bandwidth.
Mm.
Yeah, that'll suck everything out of your bandwidth, and you would have to rely on something like the built-in Steam stuff for screen
Gotcha.
share.
Yeah, and it's usually, better to have a mutual server kind of thing going on. Yeah, otherwise it's just your upload download is your internet just goes. I mean, it's bad enough here where you've got 2 people sharing bandwidth, one of which is streaming.
Right.
And our internet is remarkably flaky.
Yeah, that's usually why I have to be the one that runs the game if we have to have a peer-to-peer game. Because with Aaron and Randy in the same internet connection, that means we can't really trust theirs too much. It'll be too much. Might be too much of a strain, and we can't trust Barry because Barry's got a really. His laptop's varying quality very drastically.
Yeah, and he's basically in the same building as Aaron and myself, so
it doesn't help the pipeline much. So yeah, me out in the middle of bumpkin nowhere has to run it.
Yeah. Outside of streaming, I remembered something I was going to tell you that I don't know if I want to say it over YouTube just in case corporate bots get back. But basically, a big company made a mistake, and I got something nice out of it.
Yeah.
So that was beneficial. That's right. I told Thomas because we were having a conversation over Discord at that moment, but yeah, it was unexpectedly valuable.
Yeah.
Well, I can talk more about that after the stream.
Sure.
All right. Anybody else have anything happen this week?
I finished a game, but I'll be talking about that later.
Yeah, basically just all that I've been up to has just been sick since Tuesday. It was funny because I didn't think it was that necessarily that bad. But then I was at work on Tuesday for an hour and was like, no, fuck this, I've got to go home. And not long after getting home, I vomited pretty violently.
Oh.
And it was
not usually a sinus issue. That's usually stomach flu or food poisoning.
Unless I've had the issue sometimes where if I get a cold, it starts the phlegm in the back of my throat sets off a gag reflex, and I've had that happen because of that. But I don't know if that's the same case or not.
It's always weird because I always basically start off day one with this thing sort of as if I may as well have the flu, but then it very quickly peters off into something else. So I think, I don't know, it also might have just been lack of sleep on top of that made the vomiting happen because that hasn't happened since.
Or does it affect your inner ear at all? Do you get nausea or anything?
I'm not really sure. I mean, I generally had a thing where just standing up for extended periods of time felt like it was gonna make me vomit because I was just
that sounds
wonky.
like it's nausea or some sort of messing with your inner ear, so it's making you dizzy.
Right.
And yeah, it was funny because it was got home, vomited, and was oh, well, that was a good call. And it's it shows that it must have been very obvious because I'm already ginger, so I'm pale anyway. But one of the women at work, when someone else had told her that I was feeling a bit sick, she was like, well, you do look pretty pale. And it's shit, it must be bad if you can tell beyond my natural paleness.
Yeah.
You're beyond normal ginger pale. You're whiter than a sheep.
Yeah. We're all pretty pale up here because most of us spend 6 months out of the year indoors because it's fucking cold outside. So we're virtually translucent ghost people. So if I'm sick, I'm more like I'm gray.
Yeah, like I have to believe this was brought on by a cold snap that happened recently. Because when I've noticed for both me and my dad, it just seems to be a family thing that I've inherited this from my dad and granddad. That if there's a sudden drastic temperature shift, it'll just throw our sinuses into like, yeah, we'll just be absolutely fucked. So this could have been like something else on top of that, because I know once I vomited and then I like slept, because I kept like going in and out of sleep all of Tuesday pretty much, to the point that I was like, oh well, now my sleeping habits are even more fucked than usual, so that's great. Um and even today, like I was up until like 3 in the morning, and then just kind of like finally was able to get to sleep, and then was basically waking up every 2 hours, and it's like, fuck's sake. And then I woke up before my alarm went off, and I was like, oh, fuck it. I'll just get up now. I don't really feel all that tired. uh, but yeah, hopefully this fucking goes away quickly, but you can never tell. Sometimes it'll like not go away for like 2 weeks. Other times it'll be fine in like a week.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
All right. So on tonight's show, we've got birthdays, we've got a piece of Big Finish news, and that's it again. There wasn't even any people that noticed where Doctor Who was filming this week, so they might have had the week off. Apparently Matt has a piece of Geek Talk. And then it's time for our summary, our review, our final thoughts, and our ratings. Kind of anticlimactic for our last Classic Who episode.
As you
So
do.
Well, we could always do a historical fact check, but it's a very fantasy-centric episode that might be difficult.
Oh, it's exceedingly impossible because, yeah, there's.
I mean, I don't think the Russians invaded England in 1943.
Well, I don't think the leeches from the future came back to our present at that time either. So
Yeah, and even the Norse mythology was a little muddled. But then again, they say in the episode it's not really Norse mythology. That's just the interpretation. So
Right.
Yeah. I mean,
Vikings did invade England at one point, but
yes,
that's about it that we can talk about in history.
Yeah. I do find it funny. Apparently,
Vikings
they
happened.
avoided
World War II happened. That's about it.
I know they apparently avoided using the word Ragnarok just because it's like, oh wait, we did Greatest Show in the Galaxy. That might confuse people.
Yep.
Oh yeah, and that was very hard for them too. You can almost tell they're like, maybe we shouldn't have used that phrase last season. Oh well, too late now.
Like we've come forth with some gods who are planning to bring about Ragnarok. Why does this sound familiar?
Anyway, let's wait till the episode discussion to discuss the episode.
Yep.
And go into birthdays.
Go into all the news.
First is a special birthday. We only do this for people who are significant to the episode. And this is the birthday on the 28th of Anne Reed, who played Nurse Crane in The Curse of Fenric. She just turned 86.
And as I pointed out earlier, she also apparently played the Plasmavore in Smith and Jones and New Who. So
yeah, you know, remember the one with the straw? Yeah.
Yeah.
Straw Doom.
Mm-hmm. I understood what they were doing with that. It just looked really kind of fucked up.
Nurse Crane was the ableism lady.
Yeah, she was the professor's.
Yeah.
There were a lot of characters in this episode, and I've watched it 3 times, and none of the names have sunk in.
That one I only remembered her name because of her death. Because he sees her and it's like, Nurse Crane, you took care of me all those years. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Which, yeah, but without talking too much about the episode, I remember her death.
Yeah. But that's the only reason. It's because he refers to her by name. Otherwise, I was just
Gotcha.
like, yeah, his personal nurse. That was
Mhm.
what I was thinking of her up until he said that name. Because
Yeah.
everybody else, it's just like, okay, Russian captain, English captain, English officer. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You don't really, their names don't really sink in.
Right.
And so many of them are so much alike, even though they're different nationalities.
Yes.
But again, that's something we can talk about later. Moving on to the 29th is the birthday of Pearl Mackie, who played Bill Potts back in 2016.
Fitting for the start of Pride Month.
She turned 34. See, you think of this as Pride Month. I live in Wisconsin. This is Dairy Month.
Ah.
And our governor started this month by basically telling what he's going to do for the dairy farmers of Wisconsin.
But I don't think Curse of Fenric has much to do with dairy, unfortunately.
I know. But you said that to start off Pride Month.
Right.
That's like, first I heard of it, it's Dairy Month to me.
Gotcha.
And then finally, on June 1st is the birthday of Jonathan Pryce, who played the Master in The Curse of Fatal Death in 1999. You know, the camp one.
Dalek bumps.
Dalek bumps, yes. He turned 74, which goes to show how long ago that was. All right. Moving on to our Big Finish news. There was one new release this week. Out of Time 2. The Gates of Hell by David Llewellyn. And that features Peter Davison and David Tennant. And that's all the news we have. Matt, you want to talk about the Valley of Stardew?
Yes. So my one game I've technically kind of finished, I'm going to get into that in a little bit too, is I have finished playing Stardew Valley for my usual single-player live streams. So Stardew Valley, if you've ever heard of the Harvest Moon games, it's kind of like an independent version of that. It starts off with your character. He's sick and tired of being at an office job, and he decides to take up an offer from his now deceased grandfather to go out and take care of a farm that he used to run back when he was younger. You head out there, you meet the mayor and the local, I guess you would call her a construction worker. She does a lot of your upgrades and stuff for your farm when you have enough materials to help pair. And they get you started in the house. You start meeting some of the villagers. They help introduce things like how to take care of animals, how to start up crops, etc. And then there's also the social aspect where you can actually start to talk around to everybody, but also in particular, you are allowed to possibly make a relationship with one of the characters that you meet that is still single. I, for whatever reason, happened to bump into, I believe it was Abigail, the first day, just literally looking over a bridge. Kept bumping into her, and then there was some mentions of her being a video game player as well as her daily side stuff. So I just kept poking and started getting some stuff. And by random happenstance, I found some of the stuff she liked very early on in the game by going into the mine, which you can go into the mine and essentially do a dungeon delve. You'll fight monsters. You find more materials. You can use the materials to upgrade your farming equipment as well as some other little side stuff in your inventory management. And that's probably one of the better ways to make money unless you happen to make the fishing a lot easier for yourself like I did, because the mini game for fishing is really aggravating, and man, that thing can make a quick buck. Not only can you get a lot out of just gathering up a lot of fish, but you can also get a high chance of getting items from fishing as well. And that includes some of the artifacts which you'll turn into the museum, but if you get doubles, you can actually sell them for cash too. So long story short, I got into this game for, I believe, over 40 hours. Let me double check very quickly. It should be right here. There. Yeah, I am at 43 hours. I kept giving stuff to Abigail as well as her family and a few other people that I would occasionally do work for, and they would also pay me occasionally, depending on what I did for them. And at the roughly 44-hour mark is where I decided to call it, because at that point I had gotten far enough with Abigail that we decided to get married in game, and I'm just like, okay, that's pretty much the best place where you could bookend it. There's still other things to do. There's still like a desert I haven't found. There's still more different kinds of fish I have to find, and several other things I have to do. And there's even a town center where you can actually donate stuff to these little, I guess you call them almost sprites, and they'll actually start rebuilding the town center for you. I'm not sure what that leads up to, but it's been interesting. So overall, I have to say, I really did enjoy my time with this. I'm actually planning to keep this around and play it off stream. Maybe stream if I actually come into anything of interest, or it looks like I'm about to pop into something of interest. I generally enjoyed my time with it. There's a lot of interesting moments, and you actually, if you get people like you enough, you actually get genuine moments where it's just you, your character and their character interacting for whatever event is going on. And they also still have like seasonal stuff as you pass through the game too. Yeah, like the winter month that you go through, they do technically have their own version of Christmas where everyone's a secret Santa for everybody, kind of a deal. Things like that. So it's been a pretty fun ride, and I won't mind keep going with it for a little while and see where it goes.
So is it roughly the same type of game as something like an Animal Crossing?
Animal Crossing is more about just doing random stuff to find like items to make money. There's a little bit of that, but it's very much more you can actually make a legitimate farm, grow your crops, I take care of chickens too, and they make me some. I've gotten them up to a friendly point that they make some like tier 3 top-notch eggs for me now. You can also get cows, pigs. Apparently, at one point, if you get really deep into endgame, you can even make a slime farm.
Yeah.
Like Dragon Quest slimes, yeah. I have seen that on the list of things to build. I'm like, well, that's different. And like I said, you can use the mines more or less as a dungeon crawl, and there's no big final boss, but they do give you an end game item where you just like, okay, now what does this do? And apparently it will lead me off to somewhere else now when I find the right thing. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on all at once. You can compare it a little bit to Animal Crossing, but again, I would still more compare it to Harvest Moon.
Yeah, I had read a little bit about Harvest Moon, probably it was Nintendo Magazine, so it was probably over 20 years ago. If it's been out that long, I don't know if it's been out that long, but
the
that's why I
franchise has been around for a while, since like at least the N64.
So in terms of like things I've seen people play, that's why Animal Crossing was the closest thing I could mentally compare it to.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that, but it's less of just randomly digging holes and catching bugs, and more about actually like doing actual farm work, doing actual dungeon delving, fishing. You, like I said, you can make a ton out of that alone. And yeah, you can make. I think Animal Crossing has a little bit of the social aspect with some of the characters. Oh yeah, that's the other thing too I didn't even mention. Technically, if you wanted to, you could try going for a LGBT marriage too if you want to in the game. You're not restricted to just gals if you're having to play a male character. And vice versa. You can also pick a female character to play as, and you don't have to just go after guys. Abigail's just the one that kind of interested me and kept popping up when I wandered around town, so I just kept kind of poking her and found out some information and decided to give her an amethyst, and apparently that's one of the top tier things on our list. And I'm like, I constantly find these in the mine all the time. Yes, we're going to the mines again. Oh, and then I tried doing something. I tried testing out an item with her at one point just to see if she liked it or not. And it turns out it's on her birthday. It's an item she didn't care for. I'm like, oh no. I'm pretty sure that set me back about a week.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you keep giving them bad things, they will actually decrease in their like for you. So there is a list.
Hmm.
But yeah, outside the amethyst, Abigail's pretty easy. You just go to the pub and just buy food. She apparently adores any kind of food, although certain types seem to agree with her more.
So I'll take notes. When in a relationship, get your significant other food and don't get them things they don't like.
Food, things they don't like, maybe amethysts. Especially if they're pepper hair, apparently they like amethysts.
All right. Well, anyway, that's pretty much Stardew Valley.
Yeah, it's been fun. It's a long game though, so I'm 40 hours in. I'm pretty sure it's gonna be longer than that. I heard someone reach 20 years in game. So yeah.
So, looks like next would be our episode summary.
Which also goes back to me, as I recall correctly.
Yeah,
Yep.
and you're first in the review order too. So
Everything's coming up me today, apparently.
Nope.
Yep. Got your drink because you're going to be talking a while.
I just took my sip, so.
All right, let me pop open the stopwatch. All right, tell me when you're ready.
All right, ready.
3, 2, 1, go.
All right. The episode more or less opens up with the Doctor and Ace appearing apparently at a secret base where something is going on, but the Doctor is being purposely vague. I think this is technically during his time of training Ace for stuff too. Excuse me. They are stopped and accosted by guards for a few moments, but the Doctor uses his usual Doctor mannerisms and basically talks his way in. Once he gets into the office of the local scientist who's trying to figure out, I believe it was secret coding messages and so forth, he very quickly uses a typewriter and 2 different pens with 2 different hands and basically fakes papers for him to be there. A bit more carrying on and talking with the scientist and also finding quarters for themselves at the base. The Doctor and Ace are trying to figure out what's going on and why things seem a little bit strange. They figure out that there's a machine that's actually doing a lot of the hard work of trying to translate different broadcasts and stuff. In particular, they seem to be focused on trying to get Russian broadcasts translated. While this is all going on, there is a small group of Russian soldiers that do appear on shore, and it does seem like, for whatever reason, they seem to be interested in the scientist. However, before they can really do much of anything, they are attacked by something that seems to be in the water on the shores nearby. Things continue to advance. Literally a new script as they're trying to study some local Viking script. They find more of it actually appearing as things are going on, and it causes the machine to go wild as they're trying to find out more and more information and trying to translate this stuff. What seems to happen is that they allow whatever is going on here to bring out some creatures that seem to be almost vampiric in nature. They attack 2 of the local girls, who also kind of join their ranks and start to lead them into continued combat, in particular with the military, but also take a few victims from the town as well, it would seem, as they also attack the woman that was looking over them. They also as this is all going on, the Russian soldiers are actually trying to help the doctor as he's convinced them that he can at least try and lead them to a safe way through all of this mess that they're getting involved in. And it seems like they're already being set up as the intent of the soldiers here already at the base was that they were going to let them have a part of the thinking machine. But the reason why is because they had something special in mind. In particular, they have been finding a secret underground poison, which they have been collecting. And with only a minor amount of it, they could possibly set up essentially a deadly death gas that would actually kill a majority of the soldiers whenever it particularly went through a message that contained the word love in it and would set it off the device. So this is all going on. They're all trying to backstab each other. As things continue to advance and the monsters appear more and more regularly, the soldiers start ignoring the orders of the guys who are setting up all these backstabbing plans, because it also turns out at the same time they're going a little bit bonkers because they've been trying to plan the whole thing with whatever's behind the leech monsters and the poison underground as well. And it kind of all culminates in this wild range of things happening. The soldiers eventually shoot the leader, I believe the UK leader of this troop. A majority of the women who were working the machines that were picking up the messages are all attacked by the leeches and become them as well. Ace manages to save one of the ladies who's also got a child and manages to get them onto a car and get them out of there. And it's later revealed that the baby was in fact not just had shared a name with her mother, but actually was her mother. And then apparently all this was a big loop-de-loop to get Ace here at this particular point to be a pawn for everything going on, as we reveal that Fenric is, while the name given to it, it's just the very basic understanding of what's going on from the point of view of the Vikings. And so it's not really this creature's name, but it's some sort of deity-esque thing that had previously done battle with the Doctor before, and the Doctor had won. And just as he thinks he's winning, what has actually happened is the Doctor has convinced one of Fenric's, if you will, pawns to actually attack back instead, and actually end this deity, if you will, that's taking over a human body, and undo all the plans they were planning for, and bring things to a more or less conclusion as some of the soldiers were finally allowed to now leave, and a lot of the backstabbing plans have been foiled. And I guess that's about it. The end.
Okay.
It gets very complicated
Yes.
and hard to summarize by the end.
Yep. You did it in about 5 minutes, 15 seconds.
Okay, it's like 34 on my end.
I was a little late on the stopping it, so I had to guess backwards.
Okay.
I do want to actually make a historical fact check. I wasn't planning on it, but I did realize that there is a piece of historical information in that.
Oh.
It's the name of the device that Matt forgot. Well, I mean, he mentioned the device, he forgot the name.
Yeah, I can't remember the name. That just has the thinking machine.
Yeah, it's called the Enigma machine. And this was an actual thing.
It's called the Ultima machine in the episode.
Okay, it is based on the Enigma machine.
Right. Just like he's not actually called Alan Turing in the episode, but that's definitely who he's based on.
I think they called it the Enigma at one point. It's like they forgot that they had renamed it.
I believe it.
Maybe.
Or the actor forgot the line and just knew their history. Yeah.
Because they call it the Ultima machine in like episode 1. And then I think they called it the Enigma by episode 3. The thing is, the actual Enigma machine was not this huge mainframe-like thing. It was about the size of a typewriter. So while they had the core being about the size of the typewriter, in reality, the whole machine was basically about the size of a typewriter. And it was used to intercept German transmissions and decipher them and translate them into English. Or at least translate it into common German, and then that would be translated by somebody who knew German.
Mm.
Either way. The whole device was the key to winning World War II, because suddenly we could crack their codes.
Yeah.
But I just like the fact that they made it look like this huge-ass mainframe, and literally it looks like a portable typewriter. They show it in a box about the size of a suitcase. So, yeah. I thought that would be relevant. Other than that, yes.
Mhm.
Vikings once raided England from like the 6th century to 1066 and did the occasional raid thereafter. And yes, World War II happened during that time, and people were evacuated from London because of the Blitz.
Related to World War II, it took until my third time watching this episode to realize that those were not Nazi soldiers invading. I just assumed and never dug any deeper until this time. I was like, okay, they're very clearly Russian, and then I thought maybe there were Germans and Russians, but no, they're all Russian.
Well, no, they're all Russian.
Yeah, you notice they made the Russians the heroes.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of an interesting head tilt.
Well, not really, because remember this was being filmed in 1989. And the Red Menace threat was over by then.
Oh yeah, this would have been post-Reagan, so the Berlin Wall would have been down already.
The Berlin Wall, I don't think was quite down when they filmed it, but went down in the interim between filming and airing.
Quite possibly, yeah.
Because I think that was like November of '89 or something like that.
And I guess it's just like the military, but they're ultimately just random soldiers. It's not like they're trying to be like, oh yay, look at these Russian politicians who you should like,
we're still technically following the Everman who's still a soldier.
Although on that note, I don't think this episode could have aired on an American owned station, at least not one that was state owned like the BBC, because they're basically even when they have the very short exchange between the Russian and British soldier, they're workers of the world unite or something like that. He's basically yeah, communism is correct. And I'm surprised that flew on the BBC, but it would not have flown on a state-owned U.S. channel.
Well, do remember that this was filmed during the age of Glasnost, where Gorbachev had come out and it's like Westerners, friends,
No, but my point is the basic the whole the lower class solidarity thing, that's still if you were to go on the seat of Congress today, they would be like, oh, that's communist nonsense, you need to be lynched and everything else. So I feel like in the 80s during the Bush administration, it still would have been just as bad.
Not quite. Things have gone further right since the Bush administration. And this since the Reagan-Bush era, they were more moderates compared to today. As I've been prone to saying, Bush Jr., after the whole Two Towers incident in New York, kind of took the Republican Party and marched them to the right. So they became even more...
after Reagan and Falwell had already done so.
Yeah. But there was kind of a swing back. If you look at the 2000 election, there were only 2 or 3 original points of contention between Al Gore and George W. Bush at the time, and most of that had to do with Al Gore's environmentalist policies. Other than that, most of them was on the same page. There wasn't much difference between the two as they campaigned.
As they campaigned, yeah.
I personally think it wasn't Bush that led it. I think it was Cheney kind of dragged Bush to the right, and the party followed Bush.
Right.
But either way, by about 2003, 2004, the Republican Party was more conservative than it was. So if you're looking around 88, 89, this could have shot past the radar because the mentality was, hey, the Russians are our friends now.
Yeah.
The Cold War is over.
I'll take it as it could have gone either way because that was also the era of satanic panic, but I don't want to get way off topic.
Yeah.
So let's go into what we liked and disliked.
Okay, and Matt, you're first.
So overall thing I liked on this one. I have to say a lot of the costuming, and obviously a lot of this is period piece for the most part. But as out of nowhere as the leech creatures are, at least they looked like they were decently made. There's a lot of articulation.
Their name were hemivores. Yeah.
The hemivores were really interesting and really well done. There's different stages of what they look like too. Like you got the more human-looking ones with the freaky like Nosferatu fingernails, and that's all they got. And then you got the ones that get more advanced that look more almost zombie-ish and more like a rotten Nosferatu-looking thing. And then you got the big guy who just looks like
Came
he's
from the future.
Yeah, and he looks like he's almost like an eldritch horror to some degree.
A cross between an eldritch horror and the creature from the Black Lagoon.
Exactly.
Because you can actually see like gills on the side of his head.
You can see, you can see the gills on the side of his head. A lot of his face is looking more octopi-ish, but you can also still see the eyes where the human still was.
And, looking at it from a modern angle, you wonder how these relate to future kind, as we saw in New Who, which were the end of the human race in New Who, and also seem to crave human flesh and blood.
Well, apparently the end of the human line always just leads back to cannibalism, it seems, of some kind.
Apparently.
That's right, and they did say, or at least they seem to hint that the guy they brought back from the future was also a descendant of the Vikings, so he's in some way related to humans.
I guess speaking of costuming, the hemivores also have like I knew to look for it because it had been pointed out in something I'd watched before, but they all have costuming from well before this is set.
Yeah, like a bunch of the more rotten ones look like they have like more ancient outfits on.
Yeah, that's because it's supposed to be all the descendants of those Viking families.
Yeah.
So each consecutive generation.
So basically, they put in the legwork for their zombie/vampire picture rather than just slapping whatever outfits they had available on them.
Well, still, I mean, they have access to the BBC's costume department.
They have they have access to the costuming department, and they kind of made a background where all these different weird age time costumes would actually fit into the story.
Hey, look, we're kind of doing a period piece, but it's going to be multiple periods. So can you give us costumes for this era, this era, this era, this era, and this era?
And particularly these kinds of people.
Or 50 random costumes from 600 CE to, they wouldn't have said CE, but to the 1940s.
Yeah, it's probably what they said was probably anything just prior to 1066 to late Victorian. And just give us a couple at random so that we can put them in there. And they might look kind of weird when you get them back.
There might be some purplish makeup on it. Don't worry about it, though.
Okay, Bill?
So I'm going to go with how layered this is. Like, if you've heard of people saying, "Oh, every time they watch such and such movie, they find more themes or more like examples and more layers," or people who've played, 100-hour video games saying that. This episode is that for me. The first time I read it, the first time I watched it, I went in blind, and there was all the stuff about, the various like obvious fantasy and history things. Um, or that may have, no, I think that, well, no, yeah. Then I've seen essays trying to analyze like it as a uh, growing into adulthood and sexuality, which there's a lot of those metaphors in there. Um, then you realize just how many queer themes there are. I didn't even realize until the third time watching this that they weren't allowed to have the Alan Turing proxy be struggling with the sexuality like the writer wanted to. So they used disability kind of as a metaphor there, which is something that a lot of productions would have had to do. Um, and then if there's the communist themes we were just talking about, every time I watch this, it's peeling back more and more layers, and I love that they were able to fit that you know, into a Doctor Who story during a fairly low budget time of the show. It just goes to show that they're still bringing their A game, even at this point, or especially at this point. It's one of my favorite seasons. So,
Okay. Thomas?
Um, I guess I like the explanation for how to ward off the herbivores was interesting in that they just make it like a general faith, rather than like religious faith.
Yeah.
And how that manifests.
That actually reminds me a lot of Fright Night. That's actually how they treat it in that movie too, and that's straight
Yeah.
up vampires.
Yeah.
It would remind me. It reminds me a bit of the White Wolf system too for tabletop RPGs. Their true faith, because it wasn't just faith; it was true faith.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You had to completely believe in it, and like here, it did not have to be religion. You could have true faith in science, in scientific fact.
yeah.
In Fright Night, you just have to believe that whatever symbol you're using will actually protect you, and that's why the one boy early on in the movie was able to put a cross up to a vampire's forehead and leave a permanent mark on it.
Which I guess it would not surprise me to learn if they maybe slightly tweaked the idea from that, because that movie did come out.
That movie does predate this by at least a couple years.
I think it was used before that in Salem's Lot, which came out over a decade before.
If Salem's Lot did that too, that would also might be where it comes from.
It might have also been well established in the mythos by then, because we're seeing a whole bunch of different things bring it up.
Yeah.
But I did, on that note, I thought it was interesting that we're watching this so close to the God Complex, with which has a very similar sort of theming going on.
So, what I liked about this is the culmination of Ace's storyline.
Yeah.
It ties everything up in a nice little bow. Technically speaking, this was supposed to air before Ghostlight.
Yeah.
But a post-production issue had Ghostlight had this delayed until after Ghostlight aired.
Oh, I didn't realize. I thought that she was still gonna go off to Ghostlight yet. Okay.
Not by air date. It was this followed by Survival.
I think it was intended to be the other way around, because she does talk about, like, she does bring up the house here, and I think in Ghostlight he specifically is like, "We're going here because I remembered you bringing up the house in."
Although he was nowhere near her in that scene.
True, that's true, but that would be a continuity error, if anything, I think.
Yeah. The idea is essentially that it was supposed to be a sort of setup in a way for Ghostlight, but then because the order ended up having to be changed, it ends up seeming more like a callback.
Did it have to be changed, or did they just kind of decide that the order didn't matter as much?
There was a post-production problem with this episode.
Okay, gotcha.
And they had to wind up delaying it. It was either a post-production or a filming issue, like a reshoot or something they had to do. Either way, it delayed it enough that they couldn't get it done in time for its normal slot, where Ghostlight was ready to go, so they aired it first, followed by The Curse of Fenric.
Gotcha.
Either way, it came out that this now ties up all of Ace's storyline. Survival after this is an epilogue.
And then the following season, she was intended to go on to a new chapter of her life without the Doctor.
Correct.
Supposedly, yes.
But you see it here. This is where everything from Dragonfire onwards, her whole life, basically gets wrapped up in that episode, and you don't see that.
Mm-hmm. That's right, and it calls back to Dragonfire too.
Yep. It calls back. Yeah, it's like, yeah, we've been planning this for 2 seasons now. Haha, fuck you.
Before Moffat made it cool, or I don't know if "made it cool" is the right word, but made it consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, made it constantly happen. Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, before that, you really didn't see that with a companion. They kind of signed on, did a little bit, maybe grew a little, but there wasn't a fully developed story arc like this, and seeing it like this in Classic Who is kind of cool. All right, let's talk about what we didn't like. Matt.
Oh, what we didn't like. Trying to think. Overall thing I didn't like. Honestly, I was at one point getting confused as to what was actually going the hell on. I was trying to understand what the hemovores were really from, and if they were from the future, but something else was supposedly leading them. So what the heck was this thing? And it's just like, oh my lord, I almost got lost at a couple points. It's one thing to say that it's complicated and understand it, but it does get complicated to the point of almost losing you at one point.
So do you agree that I feel watching this, between the way it's cut and the way it almost seems like scenes are cut short, that it would have worked better as a 6-parter?
That could have maybe helped clarify a few things.
From what I remember reading, this was almost considered to be bumped up to a 5-parter, but the director specifically shot that down.
Weird.
Because they actually
weird
shot
that the director was the one that turned down.
Yeah, they it was that or the writer, but they shot so much. Apparently like with Battlefield, there is essentially like a movie cut of this, and it adds,
which would have been even shorter, I'm guessing. Oh, it adds to it?
It adds 12 minutes of unbroadcasted footage.
Wow. Now I've got to look that up, because I could imagine that making a big difference.
And there's a longer version of Battlefield. I want to see that too.
Especially sometimes when they're
it's definitely re-edited.
Especially sometimes when they're cutting back and forth, and you're like, okay, it's either multiple people are in multiple places at the same time, or this was intended to be at a later time, and they're just speeding through it because they have to get through the footage.
Yeah.
I say it all the time when I'm GMing our tabletop game. Temporal order of operations.
Mm-hmm.
And I see this a few times in Doctor Who, and it annoys me. That yes, you have one person who's basically doing a minute-to-minute scene, and you have another person that's apparently doing an hour-to-hour scene, and they're filming it at the same time.
That's where you get the issue they poked fun of in Dragon Ball Z Abridged. It's been 20 hours. What were we doing? How long did that scene take?
Yeah, it's an issue. Okay, so who was that?
That was Matt.
That was
so I
me.
guess I'd be next.
Yes.
So mine is kind of a counterpart to Randy's, and that is that I wish Ace had more agency in how the whole thing concluded. I feel like a lot of this is things happening to Ace, and while she has an arc, I'm not saying she doesn't have her own arc in the episode. Her arc has nothing to do with how it ends. In terms of like, maybe I should have saved this for scenes, but I've already started talking. But I wish that the like big hemovore guy, his role, I kind of feel should have at least partially gone to Ace, because it's all about wrapping up her story, but it's all like things being said to her and done to her, and her being manipulated, and it doesn't feel like she gets to end it on her terms. So that's the
Yeah.
one thing I would say that annoys me a little bit.
I'm actually going to reflect on that a little more in mine, but let's let
Okay.
Tom has to say first.
I guess for something to say, I guess I'll It's funny because the one thing I kind of want to bring up, I'm unsure if it's just the fact that it was hard to keep track the first time, or if it's just a me thing or not. But what the hell? I can't really think of anything else off the top of my head. I feel like I probably had something else, but it might have already been brought up. But the editing.
I kind of brought that up as an addendum, as part of discussing Matt's point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
Because
could
it is
see that.
just like, because it is just like the first time I watched this through, there were plenty of times here and there where I was like, well, wait, hang on, what? Where are we?
Mm-hmm. It's like the tail
like,
end of every scene gets chopped off, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mentioned that in Happiness Patrol. I
Yeah.
really noticed it there.
Mm.
But it's the same thing. They just kind of...
Yeah, so some of these episodes with this particular run of Doctor Who at this point does seem to suffer from massive need of editing. And it's just like, ooh.
Maybe 14 24-minute episodes is not the right length for a season of Doctor Who.
At least not when it's made this way.
Yeah, especially like, I guess that's the other problem, is that sometimes they'd have stories that would justify longer, but they decide that no, the longest we're doing is 4-parters. So it's like,
Well, there's occasionally times where you do need that 5 or 6-parter.
Yeah, but that
But
wasn't
please
their
refrain from
control.
8-parters, please.
That wasn't their control. It was the BBC's.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're coming down saying you're only getting this many episodes a year.
It was the writer that was against 5 episodes. He felt the narrative flow would be disrupted. Because he probably had 3 cliffhangers.
Oh,
probably that'd be the excuse. Yeah.
So if he'd had his way, he would have had like 4 45-minute episodes.
Maybe.
Or something. Yeah, but he didn't want 5. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. So my issue is, while I did say that this wraps up Ace's storyline, this is not Ace's best outing. For somebody that's, supposed to have a season traveling with the Doctor, she fucks up a lot in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it doesn't help that, Sylvester McCoy is doing his best to imitate Albus Dumbledore this entire time.
Yep.
I know what's going on, but I am going to share it with nobody.
Mm-hmm.
But Ace winds up blurting out to the professor guy that the runes in there's a actual like logic circuit, a logic puzzle, which is something the Doctor doesn't want to happen. And then she blurts out the solution to Fenric, not realizing it's Fenric. if it's just like if Ace had kept her mouth shut, wouldn't have been that problem, but she just kept fucking up.
Which I guess kind of it kind of makes sense with this being after Ghostlight, because it's like, okay, one thing after another, the doctor is just like keeping her on edge. She's constantly frazzled and frustrated, so she's not at her A game. But even then, like, the worst part of that happens in this episode isn't even until like the very end. So it's like even some of that stuff coming earlier would have explained it a lot better.
But even so, usually Ace's ability to fuck up is offset by her ability to, kick ass and do stuff. And every chance she had to try to kick ass in this was pretty much shot down.
Yeah,
so
but the only
Ace
time she really got to shine was when she had the explosives to get them
through the door.
Through that one door, yeah.
And all that did is cut down the time. So I kind of felt that she was less than a little lacking this particular outing, which for her pretty much her swan song, that was kind of
it leaves you kind of going, ugh.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's my thought. Favorite scenes, Matt?
Favorite scene? Trying to think. Actually, speaking of Ace, trying to figure out what's all going on, I like the scene where she confronts the doctor about what's actually going on, and basically telling him to stop holding everything to his chest because she's trying to keep up and she's getting some of it, but she's not getting it fast enough. And he just kind of where everything finally 180 from me being very confused to finally understanding everything that was going on was basically that moment when the doctor finally explains everything to Ace, and I'm just like, oh shit! Well, episodes, you could have done that sooner. It could have avoided a lot of confusion if you would have just had this scene like maybe an episode or so sooner, and I could understand everything better. Okay, now we're running at lightning speed. Let's go.
Okay. Bill?
So I think I'm going to go for a visual spectacle with this one, which I don't think I normally do, but the scene of all of the hemovores rising from the graveyard and just all coming out, like, it's really horror for Doctor Who, and it's done shockingly well for 80s Doctor Who, and it's just a great looking scene.
Yeah, we hadn't had that much fun since Robert Holmes. All right, Thomas?
Thankfully I had a backup prepared because I feel like Matt took the one that I probably would have gone with first, but I'm gonna go with Ace distracting the guard. Just the whole like the sometimes I moves so fast I don't even exist anymore. Like that whole thing, because it's just like, holy crap, this is really interesting, and just like, don't know where the fuck this came from, but this is like just such an interesting thing that she's basically got this guy hypnotized.
You liked that. That's actually my least favorite scene, but I'll talk about that.
Okay.
I'll talk about that when we get to it. For my favorite scene, I think it's the doctor breaking Ace's faith, because I thought that was really well acted.
Which is part of why I mentioned that this episode reminded me of the God Complex. Or I guess the God Complex reminds me of this.
Okay, so least favorite scene, Matt.
Least favorite scene. Trying to decide on one. There's a couple of them where it does kind of get a little face palmy. Okay, I'm gonna go with this one. I think this was the second episode. It was second or third. Goes up to the top of the tower. She's got a ladder. She's going down. She barely gets down to the roof of the church when she's trying to escape. Basically, she's trying to do some sort of side escape, so she's not going through any of the normal doors, and so the creatures can't catch up to her. But then also, just as she touches the roof, all of a sudden, then there's like 2 or 3 hemivores right there, and it's just like, you didn't notice these? How?
Yeah, it was. That
And
was
then,
one of
then
those
she
things
literally
where
has.
that could have been a badass moment, and instead it's just.
And then and then even though she didn't, these things literally just come out of nowhere somehow. Not only that, but she then has like 0 answers as to how to defend herself from these things, and it's just like, you would have thought Ace would be the one to have the answers for at least defending herself, if not at least rendering these guys back so she can make her escape.
That was something I noticed in the last episode we reviewed too, except she had more up moments in that, is that Ace tends to alternate between freezing up and being a badass, and there's like no in between. She either kicks everyone's ass or she has no clue what to do when she's being attacked.
And I blame the writing for that.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like they sometimes just write themselves into a corner and don't know what to do with her.
They're like, are we writing Mel? Okay.
All right, Phil, your least favorite scene?
So this was mentioned earlier, but I think this is the low point of the episode for me. When Ace walks in, she doesn't see. I keep calling him the Alan Turing proxy because I keep forgetting his name. She doesn't see him. She instead sees the soldier that he that he switched his body over to. Doesn't even think anything is odd, and she immediately blurts out the answer to the problem that Fenric's been trying to solve.
Yeah.
And it just like, you couldn't stop and look around the room for a second. You immediately mention that Fenric's not there, don't think it's odd, and then you give away the answer, which I also think that the answer itself is kind of like, it defeats the whole point of it being a chess thing, but that's more of a minor gripe.
Mm.
No, I could see the Doctor doing that one.
Mm-hmm.
Because, it's like, I'm giving you a puzzle. Try to find the solution. There is no solution.
Mm.
But yeah, Ace's blurt there, I'm just like, really? Really? You didn't learn the first time after you did the It's a Logic puzzle?
Right.
Yeah.
You are the weakest link. Goodbye.
And it's almost one of those things if they didn't make a fuck up so much, maybe you could slightly forgive it because it's a different guy that she's looking at. But even then, it is still a bit like, she's not that dumb.
Mm-hmm. Kind of my issue.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Thomas.
I guess just by virtue of it feeling a bit anticlimactic, I'm gonna go with the death of Fenric and the Ancient One or whatever it's referred to as, because it's just so like, okay, now I'm gonna corral you into here and then kill us both.
Curse your sudden but inevitable betrayal. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just very like, oh well, yep, this is happening.
Okay, so we got to mine, and I said that I didn't like the seduction bit by Ace in there. And I don't like it purely from an acting standpoint. It honestly looked to me like Sophie Aldred was really uncomfortable doing those scenes. and it just looked like it looked really awkward to me.
She was either uncomfortable or very confused.
The dialogue was good,
Mm-hmm.
but Sophie Aldred herself looked like she was about the whole thing.
I could buy it as like maybe she was iffy about it because it's like, is this really an Ace thing to do?
Yeah, I think that was the issue.
That could possibly have been it too.
Is it didn't feel like Ace to her. And
So I had to step away. You're talking the seduction scene?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I was mentioning the fact that my issue with it is from an acting standpoint. It looked like Sophie was really uncomfortable doing the scene.
Mm-hmm. Which, depending on how you interpret it, could be part of adding to the gay subtext of the episode. But there's a lot of interpretations for all sorts of things on this episode.
There's a lot of things you could read to a lot of things too. So
yeah.
We would have to actually ask Sophie what she actually was thinking during that particular bit of filming.
Either that,
maybe
or
it was a bad direction too.
Yeah, because I know I tried to make sure whether there was behind the scenes stuff or not on the Blu-ray set, and oddly there wasn't. So it was like, oh,
that's
well,
a shame.
Sucks,
this would be one to get some interesting behind the scenes of.
Yeah, because it probably would have come up. The thoughts on that because of how like noticeable a scene that is. So, oh well, maybe there was on the DVD release, but on the Blu-ray release there wasn't.
Usually on the Blu-ray release, you get everything that was on the DVD release.
Yeah, maybe it was an early DVD and they just didn't have that kind of stuff.
Could be.
But yeah, it was that. I don't know. It just felt really awkward to me. And yeah, Sophie looked confused the entire
apparently
take.
They were really physically uncomfortable. Oh no, wait. Oh no, never mind. Wait. Oh, sorry. I'm trying to like talk and read at the same time. But apparently they had to change a line because it brought laughter from the crew in the cold weather. Oh yeah, the ground was extremely muddy. So maybe that was they were like physically uncomfortable trying to like
move
get
around
it over
in the area.
It was cold. It was cold, snowy, muddy, rainy.
Yeah.
So that might have been a factor there.
Typical British weather trying to do.
yeah.
This sort of
yeah.
thing.
There was one scene I noticed earlier that you had Sylvester McCoy actually have to use his umbrella for
a couple times, yeah.
And the audio was a bit crackly because they were filming apparently with the rain beating down.
Yeah.
And I'm
you
not,
could actually hear the rain hitting the umbrella.
Yeah. I have issues with their audio at the best of times. I wish there was default subtitles or captions. I guess it's not technically subtitles if it's same language, but I wish it had captions by default.
You should watch it streamed like me, Bill. I watch it on BritBox. I turn the captioning on.
Okay.
Of course, we don't have to worry about that now because Classic Who's done now. Anyway, we are up to our final thoughts.
So back up to me again.
Yes.
I'll say this has definitely been an interesting watch. It does feel like maybe I definitely want to see the extended cut because I want to know what got missing, and that might actually clarify a few things too. But otherwise, I think this story had a lot of really good ideas. The visuals were definitely up to snuff for this one at least. So at least they didn't completely stub their toes on making this one. I think there's just been there's maybe a few weird choices with characters in the writing. That's maybe the only falling through. But otherwise, there's a lot of really good stuff going on for this, and trying to think what else can I think of. Good costuming, good visuals. interesting tying together the story because I think this is the Doctor Who's really first big push to try and make it more continuous at the time. Keep the overarching story idea a good try, and they were starting to at least try to do that here. I guess that's all I can think of off the top of my head.
All right. Bill?
So yeah, as I mentioned, I've watched this episode 3 times now. And each time I keep finding more things in it. I even mentioned I think when I was talking to Thomas before the chat, the second time I watched this is when I noticed a ton of gay themes and the possibility that it's about struggling with like to figure out her sexual orientation. That was before I took a class on recognizing those kind of themes in media that had a lot about eras when it was illegal to make those things explicit. And during the time this came out, they had to change the script because certain things were explicit about sexuality that were not allowed. So this is right in that wheelhouse of learning even more about it from that. This is on top of just the fact that it's very visually interesting. Unfortunately, really there's just a few points that make it a bit of a mess. The whole editing issue, it sounds like it really came close to being a 5-parter, which could have solved that. And that bit about Ace's story pulls it down a little bit. But in general, I really like this episode, and I definitely plan to be looking up that bigger, longer, and uncut version that Thomas mentioned.
All right. Thomas?
Honestly, a lot of the issues this has aside, I really enjoyed this. I don't know what the hell my expectations were going into it, and it is kind of funny that I'll essentially be watching this little arc out of order, because I don't think I've seen. Because what is it? There's this Ghostlight, and what's the other one?
Okay, Battlefield starts season 26.
Ah,
Battlefield starts it. Technically speaking, Ghostlight is second, Curse of Fenric is third, and Survival is fourth.
There
That's
you
the
go,
season.
so-
And the middle two are reversed by what their original plan was.
Yeah. So okay then, I've seen depending on, so was it Battlefield or Survival that counts as the little Ace trilogy?
Survival's the epilogue. Battlefield actually does not have too much eccentricness. She has a couple scenes in there, but really
Battlefield's about the brig.
About the brig, yeah.
Yeah.
It's his last appearance on Classic Who, so.
So at the very least, I've seen pretty much all. It's kind of funny in that sense then, because I've seen all of this season bar Ghostlight, as of now. So I've seen where it ends up, and I've seen Battlefield, but I haven't seen Ghostlight yet. But so even that's, maybe like watching them all through again, or at least Ghostlight and then this might make it play differently, because either I'll have just more info or whatever. But yeah, I would definitely say this is worth giving a shot. It's also interesting because this is another one of those instances of the Doctor taking on just this fucking, I'm trying to think of what the specific, I guess just like Eldritch friggin' ripped out of
basically
Lovecraft. Yeah. And it's funny because I was like thinking back and I'm like, oh yeah, this isn't the first villain like that either, because hell, you can even go back to the Web Planet
Oh yeah, the Doctor's
Kinda.
been
the
fighting
Animus.
these has been fighting beings like this the entire run of Doctor Who. They
Yeah.
just were, I mean, the toy maker was the same cloth. He's an ancient, all-powerful being.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the great intelligence and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Um,
it never stops. Even New Who has the being that called himself Satan from the pit.
Mm.
And yeah, the great intelligence. And
And the Great Intelligence
It-
came back. Yep.
yeah.
so yeah, it's a regular New Who thing that there's some
Mm.
ancient abominable evil,
Mm.
and
Though,
the
of course,
Doctor's
this
the one that
is
has to outsmart it.
yeah. Though, of course, this is the one time where the metaphor of him playing chess with gods and winning is literal.
Yeah, very literal.
Oh yeah, this is the definite culmination of the chess master.
Mm.
Okay, so are we ready to rate?
I guess so.
Mhm.
Matt?
I get the feeling that I'm going to need multiple viewings yet, but as it stands, I think this is close enough. I can possibly call this a 5.
Are you calling it a 5?
I will for now.
Okay.
Damn it. I thought I was settled and certain. Now it says a 5. And I'm rethinking all the thought process I've just gone through for the past hour. Because it's been it's been
the
teetering
situation.
between a 4.5 out of 5 in my head the entire time. And I was just like, okay, maybe it has just enough flaws to bring it to like that 4.7, 4.69 territory. I'm gonna stick to my guns and say a 4.5, but it's close.
All right, Thomas.
Hmm. This is definitely one that could have gone either way, but I feel like compared to what we've covered in this little selection of seventh Doctor stuff, by comparison, even with the issues it has, I would still give this a 5.
Okay, and I'm going to agree with Bill and give this a 4.5, but I will say it is close.
Mm-hmm.
Which is good because the average then comes down directly between the two scores.
To a 4.75.
So nobody's wrong.
And that will round up to a 4.8, which will put us damn high.
Within the top 30.
So I'm going to
Yep.
say that's at least a top 30, I think.
That is number 28
Hmm.
out of 389 things reviewed. It is on par with The Mutants, Pyramids of Mars, Dalek, Genesis of the Daleks. Company, folks.
Very good company.
The Empty Child, The Doctor Dances, Time Heist, The Macra Terror, Tooth and Claw, Robots of Death, Dark Water, Death in Heaven, The Armageddon Factor, The Hand of Fear, and School Reunion. It is better than Day of the Doctor, Kinda. It is not as good as The Silurians, The Unearthly Child minus the Tribe of Gum, and The Pirate Planet. So there you go. Number 28 out of 389. That is all we have to say about The Curse of Fenric.
All right, please let us know in the comments. What do you think about this episode? Do you agree or disagree with anything we've said about this episode? And don't forget to like or dislike the video. Make sure to subscribe and ring the bell on YouTube and follow us on Twitch.
If you can also link us a copy of that uncut version of Curse of Fenric, by all means, comment below.
Yeah.
All right, so next time, with the lid closed on Classic Who, it's time for something completely different. Let's do a spin-off, an unofficial spin-off, with everyone's favorite robot dog. It's Canine Regeneration, written by Shane Armstrong and S.P. Krause, and starring John Leeson, Philippa Coldhard, Keegan Joyce, Daniel Weber, and Robert Maloney. See you next week.
Affirmative.